A billionaire erupts in fury when he sees a black waitress serving his table. He loudly insults her and orders her out. The entire restaurant falls into complete silence. No one speaks up to defend her. Humiliation and rage burn in her chest like fire, and that billionaire has no idea that he has just pushed her past her limit. That she is about to ignite a nationwide movement, one where he will become the main villain in a story he can no longer control. Before we go back, let us know where you're watching from, and subscribe because tomorrow I've got something extra special for you. A profound, almost suffocating stillness descended upon the Gilded Spoon, an establishment widely acknowledged as Viridian City's most exclusive culinary haven. It was as if an invisible, formidable force had swept through the opulent dining room, freezing every fork poised mid-air, every piece of silver cutlery suspended in outstretched hands, as the collective gaze of every discerning patron pivoted towards the exquisitely appointed corner table. There, a figure of formidable presence, Lord Alastair Harrington, a Caucasian billionaire infamous for his glacial demeanor and an aura of unapproachable arrogance, abruptly rose to his full commanding height. His impeccably tailored charcoal suit, crafted from the finest wool, seemed to absorb and subtly reflect the soft, ethereal luminescence emanating from the cascading crystal chandeliers above each carefully stitched seam, shimmering under their pale, inviting glow. This visual effect served only to magnify the palpable air of unchecked authority that he naturally exuded. A deep, angry crimson now stained his aristocratic features as his gaze, sharp and piercing, bore down upon the petite black server positioned before him, Imani Davis, who, despite an almost imperceptible tremor, maintained a valiant effort to uphold her professional composure. I am utterly bewildered as to how a distinguished establishment of the Gilded Spoon's caliber could permit someone of your background to attend to my table. Lord Harrington's pronouncement boomed through the hushed chamber, each carefully articulated word a veritable dagger, cruelly carving through the profound silence that had so unexpectedly enveloped the room. His eyes, filled with an undisguised sweeping contempt, meticulously scrutinized Imani as if she were nothing more than a cheap, forgotten trinket, an object of negligible value. Imani remained rigidly rooted to the intricate mosaic floor, her knuckles starkly white as they gripped the silver serving tray, a steadfast refusal to yield to the tremor that threatened to betray her arms. Her pristine black and white uniform, once a crisp emblem of unwavering professionalism, now felt less like a protective garment and more like a fragile, translucent shield, barely capable of safeguarding her inherent dignity. Her deep, rich brown eyes, which typically sparkled with an inner luminosity, were now clouded over with an almost tangible veil of pain and profound humiliation. Yet her lips remained firmly, resolutely pressed together, an unyielding refusal to betray any outward sign of weakness. From the periphery of her vision, Imani discerned a complex tapestry of emotions flitting across the faces of the other diners, pity, profound surprise, and a palpable confusion. A woman of sophisticated middle age, resplendent in a garnet silk gown, leaned conspiratorially towards her companion, their hushed tones barely audible, while an elderly couple seated at a distant, intimate table exchanged worried, knowing glances. No one among the assembled patrons dared to utter a single syllable. The tension that permeated the expansive room was not merely palpable. It was an almost corporeal presence, as if the slightest, most innocuous cough might shatter the delicate suspended moment into countless irreparable fragments. "Did you fail to comprehend my unambiguous instruction?" Lord Harrington snapped his voice, now even sharper, laced with an escalating impatience. He punctuated his query by jabbing a slender, accusatory finger directly at Imani, his inherent arrogance and sense of entitlement brazenly on full display. "I explicitly stated that I do not desire someone of your kind to be serving me. I arrived here anticipating a top-tier culinary experience, not some rather gauche exhibition of your so-called diversity initiative." His brutally delivered words resonated with crystalline clarity throughout the entire restaurant, their chilling reverberations causing a ripple of palpable discomfort. Soft collective gasps fluttered through the room as expressions of initial shock transmuted almost imperceptibly into unmasked outrage. Even the solitary pianist nestled in the corner, a maestro who had never before paused mid-melody, now halted his performance, his fingers frozen in an artistic tableau above the polished ivory keys. Mr. Silas Blackwood, the restaurant manager, stood off to the side, his complexion unnaturally pale, his demeanor utterly stunned. He had never, in his wildest, most improbable imaginings, conceived of bearing witness to such a tense, profoundly sensitive scene within the hallowed confines of his own esteemed establishment, particularly under his vigilant watch. Imani felt an agonizing constriction in her chest, each subsequent breath a monumental struggle more arduous than the last. Throughout the entire tapestry of her existence, she had endured accidental or fleeting offhand slights concerning the hue of her skin, but never before had she confronted such overt, unyielding, and merciless public humiliation. As Lord Harrington's venomous tirade bore down upon her with relentless force, she felt herself teetering precariously on the very precipice of collapse. Yet, precisely at that critical juncture, a faint yet persistent flicker of inherent strength surged through her being, fueled by the vivid mental image of her daughter Amara's determined, hopeful smile. That cherished image of her little girl, a vibrant spirit dreaming of balletic pirouettes in a future far brighter than her own, bestowed upon Imani a glimmer of unyielding inner resolve. "Sir," Imani finally articulated, her voice astonishingly remaining steady despite a slight, almost imperceptible quiver, her eyes meeting Lord Harrington's piercing gaze without the slightest flinching, even as unshed tears threatened to spill forth. "Should it be your preference, I would be most willing to summon the manager for you, enabling a thorough discussion of any specific concerns you may harbor regarding the assignment of your server this evening." Her calm, impeccably respectful rejoinder momentarily stunned Lord Harrington into an unexpected, uncharacteristic silence. The profound composure she so gracefully displayed, standing in stark contrast to his own irrational, unbridled rage, drew appreciative, admiring glances from several of the more discerning guests. Yet the corrosive grip of rage had already taken firm hold of Lord Harrington's faculties. He brought his fist down upon the table with a thunderous impact, sending a flawless crystal flute brimming with ruby-red vintage Merlot crashing to the floor in a symphony of shattering glass, its crimson contents bleeding across and staining the pristine white tablecloth. "I am in no need of a conversation with your manager. I demand your immediate expulsion from this establishment. You are utterly useless and absolute embarrassment. How dare you stand there presuming yourself fit to serve an individual of my standing?" He bellowed, each syllable dripping with an almost unbearable disdain. Across the elegantly appointed room, eyes filled with profound compassion, simmering anger, and a silent, unwavering solidarity turned instinctively towards Imani. And in that singular defining moment, she grasped with crystalline clarity that both her inherent dignity and the dignity of every individual who shared her appearance stood irrevocably at the heart of a much larger, more profound battle. A pivotal, life-altering decision crystallized within the deepest recesses of her mind. This very night would irrevocably alter the trajectory of her life forever. As Lord Alistair Harrington's cruel, lacerating words continued to echo with an unsettling persistence within Imani's mind, the radiant image of her daughter Amara shone more clearly than it ever had before, akin to a tiny, tenacious beacon of light, piercing through the absolute pitch-black darkness that had so unexpectedly enveloped her life. In that profoundly humiliating moment, Imani vividly recalled the fundamental reason why she had relentlessly pushed herself to the very brink of utter exhaustion to remain employed at the Gilded Spoon, a restaurant where biased stares and cutting dismissive remarks were not isolated incidents, but rather an omnipresent, everyday threat. Imani Davis's life had by no stretch of the imagination ever been strewn with the soft, fragrant petals of roses. Born and nurtured within the confines of Kingston Heights, a somewhat dilapidated neighborhood clinging precariously to the fringes of Viridian City's dazzling opulence, she was intimately acquainted with its narrow, winding streets, its perpetually dusty, aged apartment buildings, and its crowded, bustling sidewalks that rarely, if ever, offered a true sense of safety or welcoming embrace. From her tenderest years, Imani had developed an acute, painful understanding of discrimination. Classmates who, with cruel precision, mocked her very being. Teachers who, with casual dismissal, doubted her innate intellectual abilities, and the suspicious, lingering glances from adults whenever she dared to step inside a local retail establishment. Her beloved parents were simple, hard-working laborers who had dedicated their entire lives to toiling tirelessly for every single penny striving to provide sustenance for Imani and her two younger brothers. Yet despite the formidable dedication of their ceaseless efforts, they simply could not manage to extricate themselves from the suffocating cycle of entrenched poverty and pervasive prejudice. Imani grew into womanhood holding an unshakable conviction that only through the rigorous pursuit of education and an unwavering commitment to hard work could she truly rewrite the script of her predestined fate. She graduated from high school with distinguished honors and harbored an earnest, deeply personal aspiration of becoming a professional ballet dancer. But as is so often the case, life rarely unfolds according to meticulously laid plans. At the tender age of 20, Imani discovered to her profound astonishment that she was unexpectedly pregnant by a boyfriend whom she had trusted implicitly, only to be cruelly abandoned the very instant he learned the stark, unsettling truth. Overnight, she found herself transformed into the unwitting target of harsh, relentless criticism emanating from both her immediate family and her immediate neighbors. Cruel, cutting nicknames trailed her relentlessly through the very streets she had once considered home, and rumor-filled, malicious whispers seemed to chase her wherever her weary footsteps led. Still, Imani steadfastly refused to relinquish her precious child. She held an unwavering belief that her daughter deserved to live, and more profoundly, to be loved unconditionally, irrespective of how harsh or unforgiving the world might prove to be. Amara's birth marked the single most profound turning point within the intricate narrative of Imani's life. The very instant she first gazed into that tiny, innocent face, she knew with absolute certainty that she had no choice but to transcend her former self to become stronger and more resilient than she had ever been before. Imani diligently pursued every available job she could possibly find, waitressing at greasy, bustling diners, diligently cleaning offices throughout the silent, solitary hours of the night, even laboriously doing laundry by hand for local families in dire need. Every single dollar she managed to earn came at the formidable cost of profound sweat and unshed tears. Yet, despite her tireless efforts, bills seemed to accumulate far more rapidly than she could ever hope to pay them. Old nagging debts perpetually lurked just around the corner, always threatening to pull her under the crushing, suffocating weight of relentless poverty. But the deepest, most insidious wounds were not merely financial. They resided instead in the daily insidious prejudices that both Imani and Amara were forced to endure. At the tender age of just 7 years, Amara had already experienced the heartbreaking reality of classmates who, with casual cruelty, refused to engage in play with her simply because of the color of her delicate skin. Imani's heart ached with an almost unbearable pain each time she discovered her daughter crying quietly within the confines of their tiny bedroom, her innocent eyes utterly unable to comprehend why anyone in this world could harbor such profound cruelty. Those poignant moments tore Imani's heart into two disparate halves, but paradoxically they also forged her resolve, hardening it with a steel-like determination that Amara would never be forced to suffer through life in the agonizing manner that she herself had endured. So when Imani was presented with the exceptional opportunity of a position at the Gilded Spoon, she instinctively understood that it could represent that rare, elusive doorway to a truly brighter, more promising future for her cherished daughter. The Gilded Spoon was not merely an upscale restaurant frequented by the immensely wealthy and the undeniably powerful. It was also widely renowned for its notoriously ruthless hiring standards. The undeniable fact that they had even considered bringing on a black server like Imani was almost entirely unprecedented, verging on the unheard of. She comprehended from her very first day that she would be compelled to labor twice, perhaps even 3 times as assiduously as her white colleagues simply to earn a modicum of respect. From her initial moments at the Gilded Spoon, Imani acutely sensed the subtle, insidious prejudice emanating from some of her white co-workers' cold, dismissive shoulders offered in the staff break room, hushed, secretive conversations that abruptly fell silent the very instant she entered, and weary, unwelcoming looks from certain diners when she approached their tables. But Imani steadfastly refused to permit doubt to take root within her resilient spirit. Each morning she arose a full 2 hours earlier than required, meticulously ironing her uniform to a crisp, unblemished shine, diligently rehearsing her intricate service routine in front of the mirror, painstakingly committing that day's entire menu to memory, and even going so far as to learn every single wine on the extensive list by heart. She harbored an unwavering belief that if she exerted herself with sufficient intensity, she would undeniably compel people to acknowledge and truly see her intrinsic worth. Tonight, however, Lord Alistair Harrington's egregious outburst felt like a brutal, unexpected sucker punch, an agonizing blow to all her diligent efforts. For the very first time in years of relentlessly battling pervasive prejudice, Imani felt utterly unmoored adrift in a sea of despair. Lord Harrington's naked contempt did not merely insult her person, it struck a devastating blow at the very foundation of her last fragile hope that despite the world's manifold injustices, there still remained ample room for genuine decency and inherent dignity. Standing within the resplendent confines of Viridian City's most exclusive dining room, Imani Davis realized with chilling clarity that she had arrived at a profound crossroads. Yet a fierce resolve solidified within her. She would not allow Lord Alistair Harrington or anyone else to dictate her destiny or circumscribe the boundaries of her life. Irrespective of how dark or treacherous the path ahead might appear, she vowed with solemn conviction never to surrender, never to give up. For Imani knew better than anyone else, beyond the harsh, unforgiving prejudices of the world, her precious little Amara still needed her to be stronger than she had ever been before. Every single day, working at the Gilded Spoon felt like a relentless test of Imani's patience and her formidable endurance, particularly in the aftermath of the profoundly humiliating ordeal she had suffered at the hands of Lord Alistair Harrington. Outwardly, she maintained an impeccable facade of composure and unwavering professionalism, but deep within the innermost sanctuary of her heart, an almost constant ache resided whenever she encountered the icy, dismissive stares of her white coworkers or overheard the malicious, conspiratorial whispers that seemed to trail her every careful step. From the moment she commenced her employment at the Gilded Spoon, Imani realized with a disheartening clarity that she simply did not fit in, not in the same effortless manner as the others. Her white colleagues would laugh boisterously, chat animatedly, and relax together with an uninhibited ease within the confines of the staff break room. But the very instant her presence graced the threshold, their vibrant conversations would abruptly die on the spot. They would invariably dive back into their assigned work with feigned urgency or pointedly turn their backs as if her mere presence somehow irrevocably spoiled the convivial atmosphere. Imani, ever the professional, forced a polite smile onto her lips and bravely attempted to initiate small talk, but typically received only curt, dismissive nods or clipped distant replies in return. On one particularly poignant occasion, she inadvertently overheard two of them, a blonde named Bethany and a brunette named Clara, conversing in the hallway, evidently unaware that Imani was in close proximity. "I utterly fail to comprehend why they even bothered to hire her," Bethany complained, her tone edged with unmistakable irritation. "Most likely just to cultivate a facade of greater diversity," Clara replied with a dismissive wave of her hand. "She will assuredly never possess the requisite capability to serve our high-end clientele with the proper decorum or efficiency." Hearing those cutting words felt like a sharp, unforgiving knife plunging directly into Imani's heart. She steadied herself with an almost superhuman effort, inhaled a slow, deep, fortifying breath to valiantly hold back the treacherous tears, then hurried away into the sanctuary of the kitchen. She had grown accustomed to the pervasive nature of prejudice throughout her life, but each and every time she heard it aimed so directly and personally at her, the pain felt astonishingly, excruciatingly brand new. Still, Imani steadfastly refused to permit their ingrained bias to defeat her spirit. If anything, it served only to harden her resolve, making her even more determined to unequivocally prove that she truly belonged. Every morning she arrived at the Gilded Spoon at least 2 full hours before her assigned shift, meticulously inspecting every minute detail of her designated station. She polished each delicate glass until it gleamed with an almost blinding sparkle, straightened every corner of her pristine white tablecloths with an obsessive precision, and arranged the silverware to an absolute unblemished perfection. She diligently memorized the entire menu and painstakingly learned every wine's intricate name and precise origin, then devoted her precious downtime to assiduously studying ideal pairings so that she could flawlessly advise guests with an unrivaled expertise. Her tireless, unwavering efforts did not go entirely unnoticed by everyone. A select few regular patrons who had initially appeared somewhat surprised to encounter her began, after a handful of subsequent visits, to praise her by name, their voices tinged with genuine appreciation. Those small, fleeting moments of genuine recognition fueled her unwavering resolve to continue fighting against the daily insidious injustices she encountered. Yet alongside the kind, appreciative guests, the specter of prejudice still lurked a persistent, unwelcome shadow. One particularly busy evening, Imani was assigned the formidable task of serving Mr. and Mrs. Albright, a notoriously wealthy couple renowned for their exorbitant bills and impossibly elevated standards. The very moment Imani approached their elegantly set table to introduce the evening's bespoke specials, Mrs. Albright subjected her to a leisurely head-to-toe scrutiny as if meticulously appraising an unwelcome, intrusive presence. "You are to be our server this evening," Mrs. Albright inquired, her tone dripping with undisguised skepticism. She never once averted her piercing gaze from Imani's composed features. "Yes, ma'am. I am Imani, and I shall be taking exceptional care of you this evening. I sincerely hope you thoroughly enjoy your time here at the Gilded Spoon," Imani replied with warmth, striving valiantly to ignore the thinly veiled disdain that emanated from the woman. "Oh, I had rather presumed someone entirely different would be attending to us," Mrs. Albright remarked, her voice trailing off meaningfully as she shot her husband a pointed look that overtly begged his immediate agreement. He merely frowned imperceptibly and stared at Imani as if her very presence were a glaring, unforgivable mistake the restaurant had inadvertently made. "I can assure you I will exert every possible effort to ensure your evening is nothing short of exceptional," Imani continued, gently, meticulously masking the stinging pain inflicted by their ungracious attitude. "Fine," Mrs. Albright conceded reluctantly. "Just endeavor not to disappoint us." She dismissed Imani with a small dismissive wave of her slender hand. Throughout the entire evening, Mrs. Albright meticulously quibbled over every single dish, raising a litany of complaints concerning temperature-precise flavor profiles and even the artistic presentation. Despite the head chef personally inspecting each plate before it departed the kitchen, when Imani politely attempted to explain, Mrs. Albright simply brushed her off, growing progressively more hostile in her demeanor. Finally, as Imani meticulously brought their exquisitely plated dessert, Mrs. Albright deliberately, with a calculated movement, knocked over a glass of precious red wine onto the plush carpet and remarked coolly, "You see, someone of your particular demographic should quite frankly adhere to the task of cleaning up messes. You are demonstrably unsuited to the delicate art of serving individuals such as ourselves." Her words landed with the brutal force of a physical slap. Imani's hands trembled imperceptibly as she knelt to assiduously blot the expanding crimson stain, but she held her head high, her gaze unwavering, refusing steadfastly to allow them the satisfaction of witnessing her break. She knew with an unshakable conviction that this relentless battle against entrenched prejudice was far from concluded, and she would not permit her pain to force her to yield or surrender. At the Gilded Spoon, every single day presented itself as a silent, unyielding battle. Imani comprehended that profound truth more deeply than anyone else, but she would never under any circumstances back down, not for her own sake, and most profoundly, not for Amara and the brilliant future she so desperately dreamed of. After the profoundly wounding remarks from Mrs. Albright, Imani understood more clearly than ever that every day spent within the gilded confines of the Gilded Spoon was a quiet yet relentless battle. Yet when she stepped into the restaurant on that particular Friday evening, she immediately sensed an atmosphere even more taut with tension than was typical. The crystal lights above shimmered with an unsettling intensity over the perfectly arranged tables and chairs. The staff moved with an extra, almost frantic urgency, and Mr. Silas Blackwood, the Gilded Spoon's normally unflappable manager, paced anxiously between the tables, a worried, almost desperate expression plastered across his features. Tonight, Mr. Blackwood's cheeks were flushed with an unnatural redness, and tiny beads of sweat dotted his brow, glistening under the lights. The moment his eyes settled upon Imani's arrival, he hurried over to her, lowering his voice to a tense, almost breathless whisper. "Imani, we have an exceptionally high-profile guest arriving this evening. Lord Alistair Harrington has just booked a last-minute table. You have, I presume, heard of him." At the mere mention of that formidable name, Imani involuntarily shivered. Lord Alistair Harrington, one of Viridian City's wealthiest billionaires, notorious for his openly racist pronouncements. The press had covered his unadulterated contempt for people of color on countless occasions, even conspicuously calling out his unyielding refusal to conduct business with a company simply because its owner was a black individual. "I am intimately acquainted with his reputation," Imani replied softly, meticulously concealing her mounting unease. "But I am not assigned to serve his table tonight, am I?" Mr. Blackwood offered a quick, reassuring shake of his head. "No, Julian has been given that assignment, but please exercise extra caution. Lord Alistair Harrington is notoriously demanding. We cannot afford any missteps tonight, not under any circumstances." Imani nodded, feeling some of the immediate pressure ease, though certainly not enough to dispel the pervasive tension. The palpable tension in the expansive dining room seemed to thicken with each passing second. Her coworkers exchanged anxious, knowing glances, all acutely aware of the potential trouble Lord Harrington's imposing presence could inevitably bring. Minutes later, the grand front doors swung open with an almost theatrical flourish. A small, imposing entourage entered, led by Lord Alistair Harrington himself. He strode into the room with the imperious bearing of a conquering general, his demeanor cold, his gaze imperious, his sharp features illuminated by the overhead lights. He wore a flawlessly tailored navy suit, a crisp white shirt monogrammed with his distinctive initials, and meticulously polished leather shoes whose heavy, deliberate steps echoed profoundly on the polished hardwood floors. Behind him trailed his associate Mr. Owen Reed, polite but visibly tense, and two burly black-suited bodyguards, earpieces discreetly in place, meticulously scanning the room as if on high alert for any perceived threat. The restaurant fell into a deathly suffocating silence. Nearby diners instinctively turned to watch with a mixture of curiosity, apprehension, or even awe. It was as if Lord Harrington's very arrival had metaphorically sucked the life, the vibrancy out of the entire space. Mr. Blackwood immediately stepped forward, bowing respectfully, his posture conveying deference. He then led the formidable party to Table 9, a distinguished VIP spot nestled intimately into the restaurant's most elegant corner. From a discreet distance, Imani observed Lord Harrington survey the room with an air of haughty disdain, as though meticulously judging whether the gilded spoon adequately met his impossibly lofty standards. Imani dutifully focused on her own assigned tables, but her heart pounded with an unwelcome, persistent rhythm. Julian, the server assigned to Lord Harrington, appeared equally on edge, his movements betraying his nervousness. He fussed obsessively over the intricate place settings, meticulously straightening napkins and adjusting crystal glassware with an almost frantic energy. Then, just as he wheeled a polished tray laden with chilled champagne toward Lord Harrington's table, disaster swift and unforgiving struck. As he stepped into the bustling kitchen to fetch the complimentary glasses, Julian's foot slipped on a stray lemon wedge, discarded and unseen. He crashed to the gleaming floor with a resounding thud, the entire tray shattering in a dramatic spray of glittering glass and effervescent spilled bubbles. Every single head in the room turned in unison. Julian clutched his ankle pain, clearly etched across his features, surrounded by glittering, treacherous shards of glass. Mr. Blackwood rushed over his complexion, visibly draining of all color, as he comprehended with dawning horror that his key server for the entire evening was now out of commission. His eyes darted frantically around the room until they finally inevitably settled upon Imani. "Imani!" He called out, his voice urgent and laced with an unmistakable reluctance. "You will simply have to assume responsibility for Julian's table for Lord Harrington tonight. I am fully aware it is sudden, but there is no one else available to undertake this task." Imani felt her heart execute a sudden alarming skip. She met Mr. Blackwood's anxious eyes. Then her gaze drifted towards Lord Harrington's table. His cold, proud stare happened to fall directly upon her, and she felt an unwelcome shiver of dread course through her being. But she knew with an absolute certainty that she could not under any circumstances refuse. She inhaled deeply, drawing upon an internal reservoir of calm, and answered softly with unwavering composure, "Understood, Mr. Blackwood. I shall endeavor to perform to the absolute best of my abilities." She meticulously smoothed her uniform one final time and approached Lord Harrington's table with every ounce of professionalism she could possibly muster. As she drew near, Lord Harrington subjected her to a cold, dismissive once-over, his face flickering with an undisguised disappointment and profound disdain, even before she uttered a single word. "Good evening, Lord Harrington," Imani said gently, her voice steady. My name is Imani, and I shall be attending to your esteemed party this evening." Lord Harrington paused, his icy gaze fixed unblinkingly upon her. A sneer, slow and deliberate, curled his lips as he retorted, "Fine. I sincerely hope you comprehend the gravity of your responsibilities. I harbor a profound aversion to repeating myself." His curt, dismissive words struck Imani hard like a physical blow. She realized in that precise moment that tonight would prove to be no ordinary shift. It might well be the singular greatest challenge she had ever confronted. Yet once more she thought of Amara, her precious little girl, who harbored an unwavering belief in her, and Imani vowed with fierce resolve that she would not permit anyone, not even Lord Alistair Harrington, to make her falter. From the very instant Imani introduced herself to Lord Alistair Harrington, she distinctly observed the flash of unvarnished contempt and profound disdain within his cold, piercing eyes. He made no discernible effort to conceal his utter disappointment that his assigned server for the evening was a black woman, an individual akin to Imani herself. Tilting his head with an air of superior judgment, he appraised her meticulously from head to toe, as though her very presence within this upscale refined restaurant constituted a grievous affront to his elevated status. "Pray tell, what was your designation once more?" Lord Harrington inquired, his gaze remaining as frigid as ever, each syllable drawn out with a theatrical flourish, as if he were bestowing a rare, magnanimous courtesy upon an individual positioned far beneath his own lofty station. "I am Imani, sir," she reiterated softly, valiantly forcing her voice to maintain its unwavering steadiness, meticulously betraying no hint of the imperceptible tremor she felt convulsing deep within her core. "I shall be your primary server for the duration of this evening." Lord Harrington fell silent for a prolonged beat, his arrogant eyes narrowing perceptibly before he offered a faint, smirking smile, chillingly devoid of genuine warmth. "Imani, a rather charming appellation, I dare say. However, you must understand I have partaken of culinary delights within the finest establishments across the globe, London, Paris, you name it. And I must confess, I have quite rarely encountered an individual such as yourself, permitted to serve within venues of this distinguished caliber." Imani felt her spine stiffen instinctively, an icy chill coursing ominously down her back. His casually delivered remark cut with surgical precision straight to the very core of her identity and the profound tapestry of her background. She swallowed the burgeoning lump in her throat, utterly determined to maintain her composure and unwavering politeness. "Sir, I have undergone the most rigorous and exacting training to meet the Gilded Spoon's unequivocally highest standards. I am profoundly confident that I can furnish you and your esteemed party with an evening of the utmost satisfaction." A mocking curl, a subtle twist of disdain teased Lord Harrington's lips. "Oh, truly? Well, in that case, I find myself positively yearning to ascertain precisely how elevated that standard truly is." He cast a fleeting glance at his companion, Mr. Owen Reed, who shifted uncomfortably in his seat and deliberately averted his gaze, clearly unwilling to be a participant in Lord Harrington's acrid banter. The two burly bodyguards positioned discreetly behind him remained utterly impassive, their expressions betraying nothing. Throughout the protracted duration of the evening, Lord Harrington meticulously sought every conceivable opportunity to render Imani's professional duties as arduous and challenging as humanly possible. When she presented his requested bottle of vintage Merlot, he feigned intense scrutiny of the label, then sighed with exaggerated theatricality. I must confess, rather astonished that you possess the rudimentary knowledge of how to properly uncork a bottle. The Gilded Spoon must have invested a truly substantial sum in training an individual such as yourself." His words, barbed and cruel, felt like a precise dagger plunged directly into her pride. Her hands quivered for a fleeting moment, but she forced a polite, unwavering smile onto her lips as she poured his wine with meticulous precision. "Sir, I have undergone training with precisely the same thoroughness as every other server employed within this establishment," she replied calmly, though each word was laden with her silent, profound hurt. But Lord Harrington, seemingly insatiable in his desire to inflict discomfort, did not cease his barrage there. When Imani delivered the exquisitely plated appetizer, he eyed the perfectly arranged dish with a dismissive glance, then looked back at her with a sardonic, knowing smirk. "I do fervently hope you will refrain from inadvertently dropping anything upon my table. I have regrettably encountered clumsy servers of your ilk who have utterly ruined entire dinners for me on prior occasions. By this juncture, Imani understood with chilling clarity that he was deliberately, meticulously humiliating her in front of every single person present in the dining room. A few sympathetic diners glanced over with awkward concern, their expressions betraying their unease, but none dared to speak up, remaining silent in the face of his open cruelty. His cruel remarks, delivered barely above a whisper, were nevertheless loud enough to make her feel publicly disgraced, subjected to an agonizing open shame. Her heart ached with a complex mixture of searing anger and profound shame. Yet she unflinchingly maintained her impeccable professionalism. Gently setting the plate down with meticulous care, she answered in a measured, controlled tone, "I promise you, sir, you will not be disappointed in the slightest." Lord Harrington tilted his head once more, his eyes gleaming with a malevolent light. "Oh, I am already deeply disappointed, but that, I suppose, is merely to be expected. I do not harbor expectations for much more." He resumed his meal with a chilling nonchalance, as if nothing untoward had transpired. Yet his cutting words echoed persistently within Imani's mind, and she was forced to draw upon every fiber of her inner strength simply to remain standing unyielding. The subsequent moments dragged on with an unbearable tension. Lord Harrington found fault in every minute detail imaginable, from the pristine crispness of his napkin's fold to the subtle persuasiveness of her menu descriptions. Implicit within each veiled criticism was the unmistakable message that her perceived failures stemmed solely from her inability to meet his exalted caliber, her inability to conform to his arbitrary standards of skin color. When Imani stepped away for a brief moment to fetch the main course, she distinctly overheard Lord Harrington quietly remarking to Mr. Owen Reed, "You see, this is precisely why I insist upon servers who are a more appropriate fit. They simply cannot even handle the most fundamental basics. It is quite frankly disgraceful that the Gilded Spoon stoops to such a cheap diversity stunt as this." His words felt like a direct, brutal blow to the very core of her inherent dignity. Leaning back against the cool, impersonal kitchen wall, Imani valiantly fought back the hot, rebellious tears that threatened to betray her composure. Every fiber of her being yearned to break down, to succumb to the overwhelming emotion, but she resolutely reminded herself that Lord Harrington craved precisely that display of weakness, that vulnerability. Taking a slow, steadying breath, a deliberate act of self-fortification, she smoothed the pristine fabric of her uniform and stepped back into the resplendent dining room, utterly determined that neither Lord Alastair Harrington nor anyone else would ever succeed in shattering her indomitable spirit. For on the superficial surface she was merely another server, a cog in the grand machinery of the restaurant. But deep within Imani Davis was a strong, unyielding, and profoundly courageous woman who steadfastly refused to permit any hateful insult to destroy her inherent self-worth. From behind the discreet kitchen door, Imani drew in a deep, fortifying breath, meticulously swallowing down the surging waves of humiliation and raw, unadulterated rage. Her heart felt as if it were being physically crushed by every hateful, venomous word Lord Alastair Harrington had so cruelly hurled at her, but she knew with an absolute certainty that she could not under any circumstances allow him or anyone else to witness her vulnerability, her weakness. Quietly, she fixed her unwavering gaze upon the gleaming, opulent dining room, her palms cold and clammy, steeling herself with grim determination to carry on with an unblemished professionalism. Cradling the pristine white plate bearing the premium Wagyu steak, its marbling, a work of art, Imani mustered every ounce of her dwindling courage and stepped back into the grand dining room. As she approached Lord Harrington's table, the entire restaurant seemed to collectively pause, holding its breath in anticipation. Every single guest, whether intentionally or not, turned their eyes towards the distinguished VIP Table 9, where Lord Harrington sat, his familiar look of arrogant disdain brazenly on full display. Gently, with a steady hand, she set the plate before him. "Sir, here is the Wagyu steak you specifically requested. I fervently hope you find it to your exquisite taste." Lord Harrington glanced dismissively at the dish, then fixed his icy, penetrating gaze directly upon Imani. A cruel, mocking smile curved his lips, a chilling tableau of contempt. "You know, Imani, I have given this considerable thought. You truly do not belong in a setting such as this." He articulated loudly enough for the neighboring tables, indeed, for a significant portion of the room to clearly overhear. I do not in fairness entirely blame you. The Gilded Spoon must be in such a desperate plight to appear diverse that they are resorting to hiring individuals who are clearly unqualified simply to appease public sentiment. His words, sharp and cutting, rang out with startling clarity in the hushed dining room, creating a suffocating, almost unbearable silence. Nearby, diners froze in their seats, their whispered conversations abruptly cut off as they looked on in a mixture of profound shock and profound sympathy. Imani's heart nearly ceased its beating. She comprehended with chilling precision exactly what Lord Harrington had meant, a blatant, unadulterated assault on her inherent dignity and profound self-worth. Anger, raw and untamed, surged within her like a formidable tidal wave, threatening to utterly drown her in its unforgiving depths. Clamping down on her trembling resolve with an iron grip, she spoke in a calm, measured tone, each word carefully enunciated. Sir, my presence here is unequivocally due to my skills and my unwavering dedication to hard work. Just like every single one of my esteemed colleagues at the Gilded Spoon, this restaurant never under any circumstances hires anyone based solely upon the color of their skin. Lord Harrington snorted in undisguised contempt, his eyes colder and more piercing than they had ever been before. Oh, really? Do not be so utterly naive, girl. Your presence here is unequivocally to bolster the Gilded Spoon's public image, to make them appear more progressive. Do you genuinely believe that an individual such as yourself truly deserves to stand here and serve me? His words stabbed directly into Imani's pride like an icy, sharpened blade. But this time, something profound within her being snapped awake, irrevocably stirring her spirit. She would no longer swallow this agonizing pain. Her dark eyes flashed with a sudden, potent determination and a courage she had never before overtly displayed. Straightening her posture, drawing herself to her full, dignified height, she met his gaze head-on, no longer flinching or avoiding his eyes, no longer trembling. Her voice rang out clear and utterly unwavering for every single person in the restaurant to hear, resonating with a newfound authority. Lord Harrington, you may possess the means to acquire a piece of exquisite Wagyu steak, but you are utterly incapable of purchasing kindness. Her powerful, succinct statement swept through the room like a formidable wave, shattering the suffocating silence with its simple yet profoundly potent truth. In an instant, every movement within the Gilded Spoon halted abruptly. Guests and staff alike stood utterly stunned, seemingly unable to comprehend that humble Imani, the perpetually professional server, had dared to stand up so boldly, so defiantly to a man as undeniably powerful as Lord Alastair Harrington. Even Lord Harrington himself appeared utterly taken aback, his aristocratic features flushing with a deep crimson as his usual ingrained arrogance was swiftly supplanted by a mixture of unbridled fury and bewildered confusion. His bodyguard shifted imperceptibly behind him, poised and ready to intervene if the situation threatened to escalate into physical violence. Mr. Owen Reed, seated at Lord Harrington's side, went visibly pale and stared intently down at his plate, clearly harboring a fervent wish to avoid this uncomfortable confrontation. Imani held his gaze for several prolonged seconds, waiting to observe his precise reaction. No one else in the room dared to utter a single word. The silence was not merely profound, it was almost electric, crackling with an unspoken tension. Finally, Lord Harrington sprang to his feet, slamming his hands onto the table with such unbridled force that the platinum-trimmed china rattled precariously. His eyes burned with an incandescent rage. "What did you just utter to me, girl? How dare you presume to insult me in this establishment? Are you even remotely aware of precisely who I am?" Though her heart pounded with a frantic rhythm, Imani stood firm, unyielding. Her voice remained steady as she replied, "I am intimately aware of precisely who you are, Lord Harrington, but that fact does not under any circumstances grant you the prerogative to insult or demean anyone. I am here to perform my work, and I unequivocally deserve to be treated with respect, just like every other individual." Lord Harrington's glare sharpened perceptibly, and he drew in a strained, ragged breath, desperately attempting and ultimately failing to contain his seething fury. Pointing a trembling finger directly at Imani, he spat out, "You will profoundly regret speaking to me in such an insolent manner. I assure you of that." Then he stormed out, Mr. Owen Reed and the two imposing bodyguards rushing hastily after him. The heavy restaurant doors slammed shut behind them with a resounding finality, leaving behind a heavy, unprecedented silence in their turbulent wake. Imani remained standing, her heart still pounding convulsively in her chest. In that singular defining moment, she realized with stark clarity that she had crossed a boundary she had never believed she possessed the inherent courage to approach. Irrespective of what the unpredictable future might hold, a small but steadily growing sense of profound pride blossomed within the very core of Imani Davis. For the first time in the entire tapestry of her life, she had not remained silent in the face of flagrant injustice. And however arduous or fraught with difficulty the road ahead might prove to be, she knew with unshakable certainty that she had already achieved something far more vital, her own intrinsic self-respect. The restaurant doors had just slammed shut once more behind Lord Alastair Harrington, but the lingering echo of his unbridled rage still hung heavy and suffocating in every corner of the Gilded Spoon. Imani stood utterly frozen, the fleeting triumph she had experienced mere moments before, now swiftly replaced by a profound, pervasive fear. She knew with chilling precision exactly who had just departed one of the wealthiest and most influential billionaires in the entire city, an individual capable of utterly destroying anyone's career with a single precisely placed phone call. Chaos, subtle but undeniable, rippled through the elegant dining room. Some guests leaned in conspiratorially to whisper, their eyes flicking towards Imani with a complex mixture of curious fascination and profound sympathy. Others remained seated in stunned silence, their faces taut with an unspoken tension, as if they had just borne witness to an event that could potentially carry devastating consequences. A few patrons quietly requested their checks and discreetly slipped out, eager to escape the awkward, lingering confrontation. Mr. Silas Blackwood, the manager, his face ashen with worry, hurried over to Imani, panic clearly etched in his eyes. He bent close, though his trembling voice was loud enough for her to clearly overhear. "Imani, do you genuinely comprehend the gravity of what you have just done? You have just brazenly defied Lord Alastair Harrington. He possesses the capability to have you summarily dismissed with a single well-placed phone call." Imani forced down the burgeoning lump in her throat, her eyes widening perceptibly as she met Mr. Blackwood's anxious gaze. She understood that every single word he had just uttered resonated with a chilling truth. Lord Harrington did not issue empty threats. His promises of retaliation were always fulfilled. Yet she drew upon the last vestiges of calm she possessed. "I apologize, Mr. Blackwood," she said quietly, her voice tinged with regret. "I simply could not remain silent after the appalling things he uttered. I am fully aware this could precipitate serious trouble, but—" Mr. Blackwood cut her off abruptly, tension etched into every visible line of his worried face. He scanned the room, noting that everyone's eyes were still intently locked upon them, then steered Imani towards a quieter, more secluded corner of the restaurant. "Imani, I fully comprehend that you are correct, but the world regrettably is not an inherently fair place. Lord Harrington is not an individual we can afford to anger. He will not merely stop at empty threats. Do you truly comprehend the implications?" Imani bit her lower lip, gripping the hem of her uniform tightly to prevent her hands from visibly shaking. She looked into Mr. Blackwood's eyes, which remained clear and unwavering despite his fear. "I understand, Mr. Blackwood, but are we truly to perpetually bow our heads in acquiescence to individuals such as Lord Alastair Harrington forevermore?" Mr. Blackwood sighed heavily, a gesture of profound helplessness. Before he could formulate a response, the restaurant doors burst open again with a sudden, jarring force. Lord Alastair Harrington had returned, his face even more terrifyingly crimson than before. Unadulterated anger painted his features a vivid pulsating scarlet, and his cold, calculating eyes swept menacingly across the room before locking with chilling precision onto Imani. He strode directly towards her, his two hulking bodyguards trailing closely behind him. The tension in the atmosphere was so incredibly thick, you could almost palpably hear every single guest's collective intake of breath. Lord Harrington halted merely a few feet away, his jaw clenched, each word spat out with an almost palpable venom. "Do you genuinely believe a few paltry words are sufficient to defeat me? I possess the power to utterly ruin your insignificant life and nascent career in a single destructive night. Imani, let us see precisely how that so-called courage of yours endures then." He pointed an accusing finger directly at her, his voice a chilling curse in the suffocating quiet. "I will ensure that no restaurant in this entire city will ever employ you again. You will profoundly regret ever insulting me, Imani Davis. You will very soon realize that the greatest mistake of your entire existence was presuming to defy me." Imani felt the world metaphorically freeze around her, each threat cutting with the sharpness of shards of ice directly into her heart. But instead of succumbing to overwhelming fear, she felt a strange, inexplicable surge of steadfastness and an unyielding resolve that stubbornly refused to bow to mere money and raw power. She met his furious gaze, her own unwavering, and spoke softly, but with crystalline clarity. "I did not insult you, Lord Harrington. I simply refuse to acquiesce to your pervasive hatred. If you genuinely believe that is a sufficient justification to utterly destroy my life, then by all means proceed. But I will never, under any circumstances, regret standing up for my inherent dignity." An absolute profound hush descended once more over the gilded spoon. Lord Harrington stared at her, utterly stunned by her unwavering defiance, particularly in the immediate aftermath of his dire threats. His face visibly shifted through a complex kaleidoscope of shock and fury before he spun abruptly on his heel and stormed out without uttering another word, without a single last remark. His entourage followed in his tumultuous wake, and the doors slammed shut behind them with a resounding, definitive finality. But Imani felt no immediate relief, only an overwhelming surge of shock and an insidious dread. She knew with a chilling certainty that Lord Harrington possessed the formidable power to transmute his threats into a devastating reality, and the small, peaceful life she had fought so fiercely to construct for herself and her beloved daughter, Amara, was now genuinely at grave risk. Her co-workers and the remaining guests watched her in a stunned silence, their eyes filled with a mixture of profound sympathy and genuine concern. Mr. Blackwood stood resolutely beside her, resting a reassuring hand gently on her shoulder. His gaze was anxious, yet profoundly supportive. "I will exert every possible effort to assist you, Imani, but prepare yourself. Things are unequivocally going to become much more challenging from this point forward." Imani nodded gratitude, and an acute fear warring within her chest. She understood now that tomorrow, and every subsequent day, would never again be the same. When the grand doors of the Gilded Spoon slammed shut behind Lord Alistair Harrington once more, Imani remained rigidly rooted in place, as if she had been inexplicably turned to stone. His cruel, chilling threats still echoed relentlessly within the chambers of her mind, like an ancient curse clinging tenaciously to every breath she drew. The elegant dining room fell into a stunned, disbelieving silence for a few prolonged heartbeats before gradually reverting to the soft, hushed murmur of whispers and sympathetic glances pointed in her direction. An atmosphere suffocating in its palpable tension enveloped the space. Mr. Silas Blackwood, the restaurant manager, his complexion pale with profound worry, hurried over to Imani. He squeezed her shoulder in a gesture clearly intended to reassure, though no words seemed capable of forming on his lips. Just then, a middle-aged woman seated at a nearby table rose gracefully and approached with a gentle, deeply understanding smile. Placing a comforting hand softly on Imani's arm, she spoke in a warm, clear voice imbued with genuine empathy. "My dear, I truly admire your profound courage. What you have just accomplished was truly remarkable. Not everyone possesses the inherent strength to stand up to an individual of such immense power." Imani looked up, her eyes glistening with genuine emotion, betraying her raw vulnerability. It was the first glimmer of warmth she had felt since the harrowing ordeal had commenced, a small, soothing balm amidst the tumultuous storm of her conflicting feelings. She nodded, her voice catching with emotion. "Thank you so very much. I truly never intended for any of this to transpire, but I simply could not bear it any longer." The woman gave her hand a final, encouraging squeeze, then returned gracefully to her table. One by one, other discerning diners stepped forward with heartfelt words of unwavering support. "We completely comprehend and wholeheartedly stand by you. You should be immensely proud of yourself. Do not be afraid, dear. You have committed no wrong whatsoever. We are in dire need of more brave individuals such as yourself in this world." An older gentleman, solemn in his appearance but possessing eyes filled with innate kindness, added, "I have witnessed a plethora of injustices in the tapestry of my life. What you have accomplished tonight will undoubtedly inspire countless others to bravely fight against what is demonstrably wrong. Remain strong, Imani. Each carefully chosen word, each compassionate look of profound empathy was akin to a soothing salve applied directly to the raw, aching tension residing deep within her being. Imani felt her racing heart begin almost imperceptibly to calm, only to have the insidious tendrils of fear creep back moments later, enveloping her thoughts once again with its cold embrace. At closing time, when the last remaining guests had finally departed into the night, Imani sat utterly alone in the staff changing room, staring intently at her reflection in the small, unforgiving mirror. She saw a young woman with eyes rimmed with a telltale redness, unmistakable evidence of suppressed, unshed tears. Thoughts of her cherished daughter Amara, patiently awaiting her in their modest Kingston Heights apartment, flooded her mind with an overwhelming tide. If Lord Harrington truly proceeded to carry out his ominous threats, how she agonized would she and Amara possibly survive? A soft tentative knock on the door abruptly snapped her back to a harsh reality. Mr. Blackwood entered, concern visibly softening his usually stern gaze. "Imani, are you truly well?" She managed a shaky, almost imperceptible nod. Her voice trembled as she confessed, I'm profoundly worried about what awaits us next, Mr. Blackwood. I am terrified I will lose this cherished employment, and I am at a loss as to how I would provide sustenance for my daughter." Mr. Blackwood sat beside her, offering a reassuring sigh, his presence a comforting anchor. "I am fully aware that Lord Harrington is a dangerous and influential individual, and I deeply comprehend the depths of your fear, but you are not Imani alone in this. Every single one of us here offers you our unwavering support. I have spoken at length with Madame Eleanor Vance, the venerable owner of this esteemed restaurant, concerning the events that transpired. She has unequivocally promised that she will stand firmly by your side." Imani stared at him, her eyes wide with a sudden overwhelming relief. "Truly, Madame Vance explicitly stated that—" He nodded firmly, his expression resolute. "She is intimately aware of precisely who Lord Alistair Harrington is, but she also intimately comprehends what the Gilded Spoon genuinely stands for. She explicitly informed me that she would never, under any circumstances, permit him to destroy anyone's inherent dignity within these walls." Mr. Blackwood's words shimmered like a faint, yet undeniably hopeful light, piercing through the oppressive darkness that had so thoroughly enveloped Imani's mind. She knew with absolute certainty that this arduous fight was far from over, and that a period of profound uncertainty and pervasive anxiety lay ahead. But in this very moment, buoyed by the unexpected outpouring of support surrounding her, she realized with dawning clarity that she was no longer utterly alone. Imani rose gently, meticulously wiping away the last vestiges of her tears. She resolved with a newfound determination to remain strong. No matter what the unpredictable tomorrow might bring, she would never relinquish hope, never bow to injustice, to power, or to the corrupting influence of mere money. And above all, she would ceaselessly continue fighting for Amara, the precious little girl who believed in her with unwavering faith and who needed her now more desperately than ever before. Act 2. The Echoes of Courage. The subsequent morning, the very air within the Gilded Spoon still crackled with an undeniable unease and a barely suppressed attention. Imani stepped into the grand restaurant with a heavy heart, her eyes darting around, wearily burdened by lingering apprehension. Lord Alistair Harrington's menacing, foreboding words still echoed persistently within her mind like an invisible specter, an unseen shadow dogging her every cautious move. And yet beneath that pervasive dread, Imani sensed something entirely different, something almost ethereal. A surprising, profound warmth awaited her just around the corner, a beacon of unexpected comfort. No sooner had she entered the bustling staff area than Mr. Blackwood came rushing up to her, his voice edged with an urgent tone, yet also carrying a distinct spark of nascent hope. "Imani, Madame Vance urgently desires to meet with you immediately. She has convened an emergency meeting. Everyone is already assembled and awaiting your presence in the conference room." Imani's heart performed an alarming skip, anxiety surging anew through her veins. Mr. Blackwood gently placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder, a gesture of quiet support. "Do not trouble yourself, Imani. I am absolutely certain she will offer you her unwavering backing. You are intimately familiar with Madame Vance's inherent fairness. Gathering her resolve, Imani nodded a silent acknowledgement of her manager's reassurance and made her way purposefully down the hall to the large, imposing back conference room. When the weighty door swung open, she discovered every single colleague, ranging from the diligent servers and skilled cooks to the senior managers, already seated in quiet anticipation. The atmosphere within the room was solemn, yet remarkably within their eyes, she no longer perceived the chilling distance of professional detachment, but instead a profound compassion and palpable encouragement. At the commanding head of the expansive table stood Madame Eleanor Vance, the Gilded Spoon's revered owner, an iconic figure within Viridian City's prestigious culinary scene, widely celebrated for her innate elegance, her exceptionally sharp mind, and her unshakable, unwavering resolve. Madame Vance seldom addressed her entire staff directly, but when she chose to speak, every single person listened with rapt attention. Imani took a deep, fortifying breath and settled into the sole empty chair, waiting patiently as Madame Vance commenced speaking. I am confident that all of you are fully aware of the imperative reason why I have convened this emergency meeting. Madame Vance declared, her voice clear and imbued with an undeniable authority. Last night, we bore witness to a deeply troubling and utterly unacceptable incident within the hallowed confines of our restaurant, a place universally celebrated for its unwavering courtesy and inherent respect. She paused deliberately, allowing the considerable weight of her words to settle upon the assembled staff, before continuing in an even firmer, more resolute tone. I have been comprehensively briefed on the hateful and deeply insulting remarks Mr. Lord Alistair Harrington directed towards our esteemed employee, Imani. Let me articulate this with crystalline clarity. The Gilded Spoon will never under any circumstances tolerate any form of racism or discrimination, irrespective of the source, regardless of how wealthy or how powerful that individual may be. Imani sat perfectly still, her eyes wide with a mixture of profound relief and in burgeoning pride. Madame Vance's resolute declaration made her feel genuinely safe and, for the very first time, truly an integral part of this dedicated team. Madame Vance's expression softened ever so slightly, but her resolve remained unyielding. I fully comprehend precisely who Lord Alistair Harrington is and the formidable extent of his capabilities. I also unequivocally recognize that standing up for Imani may undoubtedly entail significant risks, but now, precisely at this juncture, is the critical moment to unequivocally prove that the Gilded Spoon is indeed a place of unassailable integrity, where every single team member is profoundly respected and fiercely protected. She turned directly to Imani with an expression of sincere warmth and profound respect. Imani, you are unequivocally not alone in this battle. I and every single individual present in this room stand firmly by your side. No one possesses the inherent right to demean or degrade our staff members as Lord Harrington so brazenly attempted to do. I will not under any circumstances permit such an egregious act to transpire again. A hushed silence followed her declaration. Then the room erupted into a powerful, spontaneous applause, a mighty wave of collective support washing over Imani, comforting and reassuring her. Colleagues rose from their seats, came forward, and placed hands on her shoulders, squeezing gently in a profound gesture of solidarity. We are with you, Imani. Remain strong. Tears of profound gratitude streamed freely down Imani's cheeks, unbidden and uncontrollable. For the very first time, she felt truly recognized, truly seen, and unequivocally shielded by the compassionate people surrounding her. She looked to Madame Vance, her voice trembling with heartfelt emotion, barely audible. Thank you, Madame Vance. I was so incredibly afraid that what I had done might inadvertently harm the reputation of this restaurant, but I simply could not permit him to continue insulting me. Madame Vance smiled gently, a reassuring warmth in her eyes, and placed a comforting hand on Imani's shoulder. You are under no obligation to thank me, Imani. It is I who should be thanking you for your extraordinary bravery. You have served to remind all of us of the profound value of genuine kindness and inherent human dignity. Turning to the assembled team, Madame Vance spoke with unwavering conviction. From this day forward, let us forever remember that the Gilded Spoon is far more than merely a venue for fine dining. It is a sacred space where we protect and honor every single individual who labors here. We will not under any circumstances bow to discrimination or the egregious misuse of power, irrespective of the consequences that may arise. The room burst into resounding applause, once again heartfelt and profoundly resolute. Imani looked around the room, her heart swelling with an almost unbearable relief and profound gratitude. Though the immediate future remained undeniably uncertain and daunting, she no longer felt utterly alone. Madame Eleanor Vance's bold and resolute stance had bestowed upon her the formidable strength to face whatever challenges lay ahead. Madame Eleanor Vance's firm, decisive declarations not only completely restored Imani's beleaguered confidence, but also flung open an entirely new chapter in her life, one destined to be filled with unexpected turmoil and startling surprises she had never remotely anticipated. The very next morning, when she awoke and conscientiously checked her communication device, she was nearly stunned into immobility by the overwhelming deluge of notifications, incoming calls, and text messages pouring relentlessly into her digital inbox. Some anonymous diner, a silent observer with a discerning eye, had recorded the entire poignant confrontation between Imani and Lord Alistair Harrington at the Gilded Spoon, and with astonishing speed, posted it online that very same night. Within mere hours, the concise video clip went utterly viral, accumulating millions upon millions of views and thousands upon thousands of shares across the burgeoning digital platforms of Nexus Vibesphere and Instaglim. On social media, the hashtag #CourageOfImani instantly trended, sparking an unprecedented widespread wave of fervent debate concerning systemic racism, pervasive inequality, and the flagrant abuse of unchecked power. Imani felt utterly overwhelmed by the sudden intense public attention. A once low-profile server diligently striving for a quiet, unassuming life was now inexorably thrust into the glaring, unforgiving spotlight of public opinion. Reporters began to congregate outside the Gilded Spoon and even established persistent vigils outside her modest Kingston Heights apartment, clamoring incessantly for interviews and photographic opportunities. Overnight, Imani was transmuted into the focal point of a national narrative, an accidental yet powerful symbol of unwavering bravery and simple, intrinsic decency. Messages and comments poured in from every conceivable corner of the globe. Many lauded Imani's actions as a living, breathing testament to profound resilience and indomitable courage in the face of pervasive injustice and deep-seated prejudice. A student from Metropolitan University penned, "You have unequivocally shown me and countless others that we must never, under any circumstances, bow our heads in acquiescence to injustice, irrespective of how powerful the opposing force may be." Even prominent celebrities spoke out in her unequivocal support. Activists, artists, and influential politicians shared the viral video, effusively lauding the extraordinary courage she had so brazenly displayed. Imani had, against her own volition, become an unwitting icon, a new resonant voice for the oppressed, the wounded, and those relentlessly pushed to society's margins by systemic unfairness and insidious bigotry. But alongside the overwhelming outpouring of praise, a vicious, venomous tide of online backlash inevitably rose. Racists and fervent supporters of Lord Harrington attacked her with a torrent of hateful slurs and ominous threats, labeling her a troublemaker and baselessly accusing her of orchestrating a scandalous incident purely for personal fame. Some even issued chilling warnings that she would suffer dearly for allegedly defaming Lord Alistair Harrington. Imani had mistakenly believed she was accustomed to the invisible, insidious pressure of bias, but now she realized with a cold certainty that the harsh, unrelenting glare of media and public scrutiny could prove to be far more terrifying. Insults and explicit threats hurled at her across social media platforms left her feeling profoundly uneasy, constantly on edge whenever she ventured outside the perceived safety of her home. Her once secure sanctuary of home no longer felt truly safe, with relentless reporters staking out her building, relentlessly digging for every minute detail of her and Amara's personal lives. One late evening, as Imani diligently prepared a simple, comforting dinner for Amara, a frantic, insistent knock at the door made her heart leap violently within her chest. She peered cautiously through the peephole to observe two persistent reporters brandishing cameras with aggressive intent, pounding relentlessly on her door. She pulled Amara close, pressing a finger gently to her lips to hush her, a silent plea for quiet. Imani's heart pounded with a suffocating fear as she held her breath until the persistent reporters finally departed. Her profound fear for her daughter's safety and privacy struck her with the force of a physical blow. Imani realized with a crushing clarity that she was now inextricably caught within a fierce, unrelenting storm. On one side, public admiration and widespread acclaim. On the other, the lurking insidious danger of virulent hate and inevitable retaliation. She felt utterly drained and deeply anxious about the uncertain future that lay ahead. Yet every single time she gazed into Amara's innocent, trusting eyes, she vowed with fierce conviction to remain strong, not solely for her own sake, but more importantly for her precious little girl. In the days that followed, Madame Eleanor Vance continued to assiduously shelter and staunchly support Imani. She engaged a private security team to dutifully escort Imani to and from the Gilded Spoon, ensuring her safety. To Madame Vance, Imani was no longer simply a server. She had, in a profound sense, become the living embodiment of the very values the restaurant so proudly stood for. Madame Vance made it unequivocally clear that she would stand firmly by Imani, protecting her with every available resource at her disposal. Still, Imani's greatest fear remained Lord Alastair Harrington. He had not publicly resurfaced since the initial incident, but insidious rumors of his meticulously planned retaliation continued to smolder relentlessly. With his immense wealth and formidable power, Lord Harrington could in all likelihood potentially shatter the small, peaceful life Imani had so painstakingly built for herself and Amara over the years. Yet amidst the swirling fear and unrelenting pressure, Imani no longer felt entirely alone, a comforting realization. She recognized that her small yet profoundly courageous act of defiance had inspired countless others, igniting a broad, transformative conversation about injustices and pervasive prejudices that had long been ignored. And however many daunting challenges and profound uncertainties the future might inexorably hold, Imani knew with unshakable certainty that she had no choice but to relentlessly keep moving forward, to stand unyielding, to bravely fight on, not only for her own intrinsic self, but for the millions who were now watching her, a simple yet powerful symbol of unwavering courage and inherent kindness in a world rife with pervasive injustice and profound inequality. Amidst the unrelenting media storm that showed no discernible sign of abating, each passing day felt like a new demanding trial for Imani. But that particular morning, when she received a direct, unexpected call from Madame Eleanor Vance, she sensed that something truly extraordinary was on the verge of unfolding. Madame Vance's voice, both visibly moved and tinged with a subtle mystery, gently announced, "Imani, today we are anticipating the arrival of a very special guest at the restaurant, an individual who has specifically requested to meet you alone. I genuinely believe this will prove to be a most meaningful encounter for you." Imani's heart raced with an equal mixture of profound excitement and burgeoning curiosity. Despite having grown somewhat accustomed to the sudden, overwhelming attention from prominent celebrities and the relentless press in recent days, she simply could not fathom what could possibly make Madame Vance speak with such palpable anticipation, such profound expectation. It wasn't until a sleek, unmarked black car rolled silently up in front of the Gilded Spoon, and a familiar, kindly face behind trademark scholarly glasses stepped out with a gentle, yet undeniably impactful smile, that Imani comprehended with startling clarity exactly what extraordinary encounter was in store for her. The special guest was none other than Dr. Eris Thorne, a globally renowned philanthropist. Madame Vance quickly greeted him, her expression respectful, and ushered him into a discreet private VIP room, where Imani waited, her heart pounding with a mixture of nerves and anticipation. Once the heavy door closed with a soft click, Dr. Thorne stepped forward and extended his hand, his tone warm and utterly sincere. "Imani Davis, it is an absolute pleasure and distinct honor to finally meet you. I have heard a great deal about you and the truly incredible courage you have so demonstrably displayed." Imani rose, her hand trembling ever so slightly as she shook his, her voice earnest and tinged with a little fluster. "Thank you so immensely, Dr. Thorne. I am truly surprised and deeply moved that you would take the time to come and see me." Dr. Thorne sat down, his demeanor approachable and remarkably unassuming, quite a contrast to the imposing image one might expect of one of the world's most influential philanthropists. He regarded Imani with clear empathy and spoke slowly and with profound authenticity. "I personally viewed the video of your poignant confrontation with Lord Alastair Harrington. The profound manner in which you stood your ground and so bravely resisted those hateful, vitriolic remarks moved me greatly. Genuine courage is a rare commodity in these contemporary times, particularly when confronted with immense power and vast wealth." Emotion welled palpably in Imani's eyes as she met his gaze firmly, her resolve unwavering. I simply could not in good conscience remain silent in the face of such egregious abuse. I firmly believe that no individual should ever have to endure such dehumanizing treatment." Dr. Thorne nodded, his eyes filled with a deep intuitive understanding. "You are absolutely correct, Imani. What you have done has profoundly awakened the consciences of countless individuals, not merely within Viridian City, but indeed across the entire world. People are actively discussing the systemic injustices and pervasive racism, particularly the insidious discrimination faced by Black workers and other marginalized communities. It has provided me with much profound material for reflection." He paused, meaningfully looking directly at her with renewed passion and a grave seriousness. "I came here today to propose a transformative idea that my esteemed colleagues and I have been diligently developing. We wish to launch a new groundbreaking initiative to be named Project Decency, a comprehensive program meticulously designed to protect the inherent rights of Black workers, the vulnerable, and indeed, anyone suffering injustice in the workplace." Imani remained silent for a moment, her heart performing an ecstatic skip. She looked up at him, her voice trembling with profound surprise and overwhelming emotion. "Truly, Dr. Thorne, I find myself at a loss for words. This transcends anything I could have possibly imagined." Dr. Thorne offered a gentle, hopeful smile, radiating sincere conviction. "Absolutely, Imani. You have quite inadvertently sparked a movement far greater and more far-reaching than you could possibly conceive. The extraordinary courage you so demonstrably displayed needs to be amplified to be given a resounding voice, and we would be profoundly honored if you would consent to be the very face of Project Decency. We will forge partnerships with impactful nonprofits, astute legal experts, committed social advocates, and ethically responsible businesses to drive truly meaningful and lasting change." His words felt like a grand, majestic door opening wide within Imani's life, revealing a vista of unforeseen possibilities. In her mind, memories flashed, raising Amara alone in their humble Kingston Heights abode, the searing pain of pervasive prejudice and systemic discrimination, and that small yet profoundly brave moment within the gilded confines of the Gilded Spoon. She looked at Dr. Thorne, her eyes shining with unshed tears, but imbued with an unshakable resolve. "I am truly grateful for this remarkable, unparalleled opportunity. I never once imagined that someone like myself could play such a meaningful and pivotal role. I only worry that I might not be entirely up to the demanding task." Dr. Thorne shook his head gently, his encouragement steady and profoundly kind. "Imani, your greatest inherent strength is your profound authenticity and the undeniable courage you have already so powerfully demonstrated. That very authenticity is precisely what truly moves the hearts and minds of people. We do not require a professional activist. We require an individual who truly comprehends the daily hardships faced by Black workers and the vulnerable. That individual, Imani, is unequivocally you." Imani felt her heart swell with an intense, overwhelming emotion. Hearing this profound affirmation from Dr. Eris Thorne, a man of immense global influence universally acknowledged for his unwavering commitment to fairness and intrinsic goodness, filled her with more confidence than she had ever experienced before. She took a deep, fortifying breath, her eyes alight with a fresh, nascent hope and an unwavering determination. "I accept, Dr. Thorne. I will exert every single effort within my power to contribute meaningfully to this vital project. I wish with all my being to help ensure that no one else is ever compelled to suffer what I myself endured." Dr. Thorne beamed, rising to shake her hand once again, his voice warm and genuinely sincere. "Thank you, Imani. It will undoubtedly be a long and arduous journey, fraught with many formidable challenges ahead, but I am profoundly confident that with your intrinsic courage and unwavering resolve, Project Decency will succeed in creating lasting, truly impactful change." As Dr. Thorne departed, Imani remained in the quiet VIP room, her heart brimming with a complex tapestry of emotion, profound hope, and a weighty sense of burgeoning responsibility. Above all, she knew with absolute certainty that she would no longer walk this challenging path alone. This fateful, transformative meeting had bestowed upon her a purpose far grander and more expansive than she had ever known, a profound calling to fight on, not merely for her own personal liberation, but for the millions of vulnerable people eagerly awaiting protection and due recognition. In the immediate aftermath of Dr. Aris Thorne's momentous visit, Imani remained frozen in the quiet, hushed VIP room at the Gilded Spoon, her heart racing with a dizzying array of emotions she had never experienced before. That singular meeting had entrusted her with a monumental responsibility, an unparalleled opportunity to change not merely the trajectory of her own life, but profoundly, irrevocably, the lives of millions of vulnerable workers throughout the world. It felt as if she had gracefully walked through a grand transformative doorway. Behind her lay the unassuming days of quiet routine. Ahead lay a meaningful, yet undeniably daunting journey. After accepting the pivotal role of lead spokesperson for Project Decency, Imani quickly realized that her life was once again inexorably swept up in the swirling whirlpool of intense public scrutiny and unrelenting media pressure. No longer simply known as the brave black server who courageously stood up to Lord Alistair Harrington, she had undergone a profound metamorphosis, becoming a living symbol, a powerful resonant representative for every single individual suffering injustice, pervasive bigotry, and insidious discrimination. Invitations for high-profile interviews flooded in from major newspapers, prominent television shows, and community forums of every conceivable size. One of her very first high-profile appearances was a special, much-anticipated interview on the renowned Global Echo Network. Sitting before the unforgiving camera, Imani could almost palpably feel the invisible weight of millions of discerning eyes watching her every carefully chosen word and every nuanced gesture. Yet paradoxically, she also felt the full, immense magnitude of the profound responsibility she now bore, the profound responsibility of a representative, a crucial and unwavering voice in the unrelenting fight against pervasive prejudice and systemic discrimination. The host, a well-known journalist who regarded her with a mixture of profound admiration and palpable empathy, earnestly inquired, "Imani, what, pray tell, bestowed upon you the formidable strength to stand up so bravely to an individual as undeniably powerful as Lord Alistair Harrington?" Imani looked up, her eyes shining with an unwavering determination and profound conviction. "I firmly believe that what ultimately made me strong was not fueled by anger, but rather by an inherent self-respect and an unshakable faith in the transformative power of kindness. I simply could not bear the distressing thought of my daughter or any other individual being forced to endure what I myself was compelled to endure. I firmly believed and continue to believe that every single person unequivocally deserves respect irrespective of their skin color, their social status, or their accumulated wealth." Her sincere, straightforward answer resonated deeply with viewers across the nation. Messages of heartfelt encouragement and unwavering solidarity poured in, ranging from touching handwritten letters to late-night emails, all expressing that her small yet profoundly courageous act had ignited a spark of empathy and inspired courage in countless individuals. However, alongside the overwhelming wave of support, Imani also began to confront the harsh, undeniable downside of newfound fame and pervasive media power. Opponents, many harboring deeply ingrained racist views or explicitly aligned with Lord Alistair Harrington's entrenched interests, launched concerted vicious campaigns to discredit and overtly defame her. On social media platforms, she endured countless attacks, slanderous rumors, and false malicious allegations, suggesting she was exploiting the incident purely for financial gain and personal fame. Even though she never at any point actively sought the glaring spotlight, some adversaries deliberately spread outright falsehoods to undermine her and her family's hard-earned reputation. One evening, as Imani tenderly soothed Amara to sleep, her phone buzzed ominously with hateful and explicitly threatening messages from anonymous senders. "Watch your back, Imani. You have unequivocally picked the wrong fight. You will pay dearly for defaming Lord Alistair Harrington." The cold, unfeeling brutality of those words caused her chest to tighten painfully. She had known from the very inception that this would prove to be no easy path, but confronting such raw, unadulterated hatred still filled her with a pervasive fear and nagging anxiety. Throughout this arduous ordeal, Madam Vance and Mr. Blackwood tirelessly labored to support and protect Imani with unwavering dedication. Madam Vance hired additional security staff to dutifully escort Imani safely to and from the restaurant and public events. Dr. Aris Thorne himself maintained regular contact, offering words of encouragement and sage advice on how to effectively cope with the unwanted pressures of media scrutiny. In one particularly memorable phone conversation, Dr. Thorne reassuringly told her, "Imani, the most paramount thing right now is to remain strong in spirit. The louder the critics endeavor to drown out your voice, the more unequivocally they demonstrate how profoundly meaningful your voice truly is. You are not alone. You speak for countless individuals who possess no platform to articulate their truths." His heartfelt words functioned like a powerful tonic, helping Imani to stand firm in her resolve. Every single time she faced new threats or stinging insults, she resolutely reminded herself that this was a necessary battle, a vital, indispensable journey, not solely for her own sake, but profoundly for Amara's future and for all those vulnerable voices patiently awaiting their turn to be heard. One of her greatest, most formidable challenges came directly from Lord Alastair Harrington himself, who continued his relentless campaign behind the scenes. He leveraged his formidable political and business connections to exert undue pressure on potential partners of Project Decency, actively attempting to block the initiative's very formation. But the more fiercely Lord Harrington opposed her, the more public support and responsible corporate backing Imani garnered, a testament to her growing influence. At the official, much-anticipated launch ceremony for Project Decency, Imani stood proudly on stage as the project's lead spokesperson, gazing out at hundreds of attentive, expectant faces. She felt the immense weight of every single word she spoke, each story she shared, infused with genuine courage, profound authenticity, and a passionate, unwavering hope for a decidedly better world. I stand here today not to condemn any individual, but to unequivocally state that we can no longer remain silent in the face of pervasive injustice and systemic discrimination. If we stand together united, we possess the power to fundamentally change all of this. Thunderous applause filled the vast hall, an overwhelming outpouring of profound empathy and unwavering solidarity. Imani looked over the audience, her gaze steadier and more serene than it had ever been before. She knew with absolute certainty that this was merely the nascent beginning, and that the road ahead would be long and undoubtedly fraught with numerous obstacles. But no matter how great or daunting the challenge, she comprehended one fundamental, unshakable truth: she was no longer alone. She had, against her own expectations, become a powerful, resonant voice for millions of vulnerable workers ready to face whatever came next in the unyielding fight for fairness, inherent dignity, and the basic decency that every single person unequivocally deserves. That evening, when Imani returned to the Gilded Spoon, the very restaurant where her life-altering altercation with Lord Alastair Harrington had so dramatically played out, her emotions were a veritable whirlwind, a maelstrom of conflicting feelings. The familiar grand doors swung open with a welcoming creak. The crystal lights glittered ethereal overhead, and the solemn, deeply moving atmosphere made her heart swell with an almost unbearable emotion. Tonight's familiar setting felt profoundly transformed, not merely by the distinguished presence of hundreds of esteemed guests, passionate social activists, and responsible business leaders, but by the undeniable fact that it was the official, momentous launch of Project Decency. Silently, Imani stepped into the grand ballroom, her eyes filling with profound emotion as she recognized so many familiar, supportive faces. On the brightly lit stage, Madame Eleanor Vance stood proudly beside Dr. Aris Thorne, both gazing at Imani with profound pride and unadulterated admiration. Applause erupted spontaneously as she climbed the podium, her heart pounding with a complex mixture of nerves and a steely determination. She took a deep, fortifying breath, looked out across the vast, attentive room, and spoke into the microphone with a newfound, genuine confidence, her voice resonating with clarity. "Tonight, I have returned to the very place where a small, yet profoundly meaningful moment irrevocably altered the course of my life. It was precisely here that I bravely stood up against blatant discrimination, defending the one value I hold most dearest, the inherent dignity of every single human being." She paused, meeting the rapt, attentive faces before her, then continued in a clear, resonant voice imbued with newfound authority. "I never once imagined that one simple act of resistance could ignite such profound and far-reaching change. In these past tumultuous days, I have borne witness to both disparate sides of society, bravery, profound empathy, and overwhelming support on one side, and insidious prejudice, virulent hatred, and the dark abuses of unchecked power on the other. Yet I have come to realize with an unshakable certainty that kindness and inherent human dignity are the strongest, most resilient forces we possess in any circumstance. Imani spotted Madame Vance near the stage, her eyes shining with pride and profound emotion. Dr. Aris Thorne nodded encouragingly, his expression full of unwavering faith in her. Tonight, I am profoundly honored to officially introduce Project Decency, a comprehensive program meticulously created to protect the inherent rights of our most vulnerable workers, especially within the Black community, and to actively combat pervasive racism in the workplace. This is a bold, ambitious undertaking, but I firmly believe that together united, we can achieve truly meaningful and lasting change. Powerful, heartfelt applause filled the grand room, a wave of palpable support. Imani paused, her voice softening perceptibly as she delivered a message she felt was absolutely vital, a truth she had come to learn. In recent days, I frequently posed a profound question to myself: can the small, unassuming courage of one ordinary person truly make a significant difference? The answer I have unequivocally discovered is yes. A single act of kindness and bravery, however small, possesses the profound capacity to move millions of hearts and ignite a wave of transformative change more powerful than any authority, any amount of money. She locked eyes with attendees all around the vast hall, feeling the immense weight and profound responsibility of her carefully chosen words. I wish for every single person here to fully comprehend that fighting injustice and pervasive prejudice is not merely someone else's assigned duty, it is profoundly all of ours. When we remain silent in the face of injustice, we become in essence complicit. But when we bravely speak up, stand firmly for truth, and zealously protect each other's inherent dignity, we harness an extraordinary power to profoundly transform society. The applause swelled again, many rising spontaneously to their feet in a sustained ovation, a profound tribute to Imani's courage. In that very moment, she felt more centered, more resolute than she had ever felt before. She realized with dawning clarity that her courage had not only reclaimed her own intrinsic self-respect, but it had also, against her own will, made her the emblem of a much larger, more significant movement. After the emotionally charged ceremony, Madame Vance and Dr. Aris Thorne approached her. Madame Vance spoke with genuine warmth and profound affection. "Imani, I am so incredibly proud of you. You have shown everyone that no amount of power or money can ever truly overcome the inherent strength of dignity and kindness." Dr. Aris Thorne placed a comforting hand gently on her shoulder and said warmly, his voice resonating with conviction, "From this moment forward, Imani, you are not merely the spokesperson for Project Decency. You are in essence its very heart. Together we will profoundly change the world." In that instant, Imani looked around the Gilded Spoon, the very place that had once borne witness to her deepest pain and profound hurt, and saw instead its immense capacity for healing, for burgeoning strength, and for an undeniable purpose. She still contemplated her future, deliberating whether to remain at the Gilded Spoon, which had over time become an integral part of her life, or to devote herself full-time to Project Decency as a dedicated activist. But one thing was crystalline clear: her life now possessed a powerful, unmistakable purpose. As the event concluded, Imani stepped out into the bustling Viridian city night, the moonlight casting a gentle, ethereal glow over the vibrant street. She smiled softly, her heart filled with a profound sense of peace and an unshakable conviction. "I do not possess the knowledge of what tomorrow will bring, but I know with unwavering certainty that I will always fight for kindness, for courage, and for the inherent dignity that every single person unequivocally deserves." That was her final and most powerful message to everyone, that each of us, however small or insignificant we may feel, possesses the inherent power to perform extraordinary acts through unwavering courage, profound kindness, and steadfast dignity. Imani Davis's story stands as living proof, a testament that one person's bravery and inherent decency can spark tremendous transformative social change. If you were placed in her challenging shoes, would you dare to defend your own intrinsic dignity and that of others, even when confronted by the formidable might of vast money and unyielding power? If this narrative has inspired you, please consider liking and sharing this video with your friends and family to help disseminate its powerful, positive message. And remember to subscribe to our channel for more compelling, truly inspiring stories. Thank you for being with us.
Join us to share meaningful stories by hitting the like and subscribe buttons. Don't forget to turn on the notification bell to start your day with profound lessons and heartfelt empathy.